Here we go, fellas. Hey, this is Eric Stromquist and Ken Smyers with Control Talk 2.0, where we find the smartest and the best in the HVAC and building control industry. Today, we have with us Steve Jones from the S4 Group. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. It's nice to be talking with both of you and with all your participants.
Well, sure do appreciate it, Steve. So give us sort of the thumbnail view about what S4 is all about, if you will.
Okay, well, S4 has been in business since 2002. We have a history of doing integrations with the Johnson N2 technology, and as you guys know, that is Johnson's legacy field bus protocol. Huge numbers installed base out there, large investments, corporations in that technology, and in a nutshell, what we do is we make it very cost effective for building owners and operators to keep that technology operating and set up a migration plan for them to move to the newer technology on a scheduled basis.
Awesome. Steve, it's a pretty cool sounding name, S4 Group. Tell us about how you got started and a little bit about the name.
Okay, well, let's do the name first. That's the easiest thing to talk about. Many years ago, I was working on the Washington, D.C. Beltway as a government contractor, spending 60 hours a week managing projects, and then nights and weekends beyond that doing business development. So never seeing my family. And at that point, I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old at home, and I was looking for ways to spend more time with them. So the thought came about, why not I go out on my own and do consulting? Came up with a name, Software Services and System Solutions for the enterprise. Put it on the shelf because they didn't have the intestinal fortitude to actually go do it. So fast forward 20 years later, I had just left Johnson Controls and was going to go out on my own again, dusted off that name. My son, who was now 20-something years old, looked at me and said, Dad, no one's ever going to use that name. Well, why don't you just call it S4? And that's what it became. So Software Services and System Solutions became kind of a tagline because that's really what we were doing. And S4 is something that makes people ask, where did you get the name S4? So it turned out pretty neat.
Wow, Steve, well, tell us a little about your background. How did you get into controls?
Well, most of my background, formerly trained as a computer scientist, spent a number of years at Bell Labs and at Siemens, was working on the DC Beltway and went on a job search and found Johnson Controls. So spent 5 years at Johnson Controls, basically acting as an internal consultant there, using my networking and systems integration background as opposed to doing building automation development work, and getting involved with things like their AT&T, Verizon, MCI contracts, large contracts where scalability and integration were always issues. And so I was more of an internal consultant rather than a developer there. When I left Johnson, I was simply changing hats in the first couple of years of S4. We're consulting back to Johnson, doing exactly the same things for the same customers.
Great story there, Steve. I noticed that S4 has some unique, or just to say different philosophies, and tell us a bit about some of your vendor policies and your style, the way you go to business.
Okay. Well, we decided early on we wanted to focus on developing the technology, and so going to market, we have a series of integration partners who are the feet on the street, the people who deliver solutions. We'd like to talk about our products as being network appliances that are the enabling technology that the integration community uses to deliver value to the customer. So our integration partners will end up delivering the solution to the customer, we are in the background supporting them and making them look good.
I should have been more specific. I just noticed that on one of the nice comments you make about the market that you won't enter into a vendor. You're vendor agnostic, and you won't enter into an exclusive or anti-competitive relationship. I think that's something that you put that out there as part of your marketing portfolio.
Absolutely. One of the things that we decided, from the get-go, was that we were going to offer open systems, and we decided that we need to walk the walk and talk the talk, which means not only provide technology that publishes to BACnet and OPC and in the future other open protocols. It's just as much about how you do business, what kind of agreements you enter into, what kind of restrictions are in those agreements, and so on and so forth. And I'm proud to say we don't have one agreement in place today that is exclusive. We've actually backed away from our distributors having territories. It just doesn't make sense anymore with the Internet of Things out there and remote access and so on and so forth. So even our distributors have clauses in their contracts that say they can sell our products anywhere at all that they do business, as long as they can do the upfront engineering support and first-level technical support for the products.
Wow. So, Steve, one of the things we hear a lot about is concept of what an open system is. From your perspective, how do you define open? In other words, if you're talking to, let's just say, a building owner, and he says, Steve, what is an open system? How do you describe that?
Well, the simplest word to describe it is something that gives that building owner choice. They have a problem to solve. They need to find products and services and support contractors that solve those problems. We give them the choice of finding the best technology out there to bring to bear to solve their problems. And that's a lot of the reason why we refer to our products as enabling technology.
Well, let's talk about that a bit. So you guys are you kind of like drivers? We hear about, like, if you got disparate systems and you want to communicate together, there are companies that actually sell drivers. But is that what you guys do, or is it a lot more than that?
It's a lot more than that. When we get into the business, and maybe a little bit of background is appropriate here. When I worked for Johnson, we talked about this earlier, I acted kind of as an internal consultant. When I first formed the S4 group, I was doing the same things as an external consultant, so I had just changed hats. We looked at where we were going and wanted to make sure that this company was sustainable. And serving one customer at a time on a consulting basis just wasn't going to accomplish that. So we basically took the functional requirements, or the functional requirements for the products came from the work that I was doing as a consultant, lessons learned, if you will, both internally and externally as a consultant. And so we cloned the lessons learned into products, and that's the way we went to market. So we're continually listening. If you go to automatedbuildings.com and see some of the interviews I've had with Ken Sinclair and so forth, very much involved in the discussions about collaboration and collaboratories and so forth. We take that very, very seriously.
Say more about that, if you will, because Ken and I are big fans of Ken Sinclair. And our guest for our listeners is Steve Jones from the S4 Group out of Utah. That's the s4group.com. But Steve, talk a bit about the collaboration and the collaboratory and why you think that's important.
Well, I think it's really another part of the open systems direction, if you will. Very openly sharing information. A lot of the enhancements to our products have happened because of the collaboration with our partners. Sometimes in the middle of projects. A good example, for instance, the Jackson Federal Building out in Seattle. The integrator doing that project was ATS Automation, And turns out it was not only a HVAC control project, it was also a smoke control project. They got in the middle of the project, found out that they could not retire the Johnson NCMs without their smoke control application going crazy in the process. And so we put our heads together, put an enhancement in the system that allows you to basically make the legacy N2 communications coming from the Johnson NCM participate in the BACnet priority array mechanism. Sounds strange, but that's what we did. And what that does is it allows them to migrate away from controlling the NCM one point at a time. So it does a very, very smooth migration.
Interesting. Well, Steve, if you don't mind me asking, or us asking, I always love to hear about those really, really hard integrations. You know, what has been your favorite one, or the hardest one, or that involved the most integration and collaboration, and has the longest string of legacy components from different manufacturers? Is there a job like that?
I think that the Jackson Federal Building we looked at as kind of our flagship case study, if you will. It took 19 of our N2 routers to serve that building. It's a federal building handled by the GSA, and we were way down on the food chain as far as the contracting mechanism, and we were a supplier to the controls contractor. But that project involved replacing all the glass in the building, adding lighting control to it, replacing most of the mechanical systems, and then upgrading the controls in the building. And one of the challenges there was that the time frame that the building was built, it was full of asbestos.
Wow. And
so they didn't have access to the individual devices above the ceiling, because whenever they opened up a ceiling, it meant they'd have to perform the asbestos abatement. So our integration gets done at the head end of the system, so it made it possible to do the job that needed to be done.
Wow. Well, Steve, I tell you, Johnson Controls, I mean, what a great system that is, and I think they're beginning to phase some of that N2 product out. So I would think that there are a lot of, they have such an installed base, I would think that there are a lot of owners out there that would be very interested in your services, because it seems like you could take a legacy system and then continue to use that integrated into some of the great front-end softwares like DG Logic or J2 Innovation or SkySmart to take advantage of the big data aspects of it. And also, we were curious, we visited a place a couple weeks ago called ISA, and they actually rebuild and repair, or recondition, I should say, legacy systems. And they're a big Johnson reconditioner. Are you familiar with those guys at all? And sort of what are your thoughts on that?
We haven't done anything with them, but it's good to know that there's that resource out there. Typically, what happens? Well, let me back up and just go a different direction here a little bit. One of the things that I do a lot of is web-based training, and I always start out the presentation with, guys, here's what we're going to talk about, and the subtitle on the title page of our presentation is extending and enhancing Metasys. And so what we're doing, what we're coaching our partners to do is look at what they're doing as you are extending the life of the legacy N2 devices that are out there, possibly long beyond what anyone ever thought the expected life would be, and you are enhancing the capabilities of the system. So we have the only product out there that allows you to do an integration into Metasys and coexist with the Johnson head end. That means it's business as usual as far as the day-to-day operations of the building until you no longer need that to be happening. And at the same time, you can add value to the system through another operator workstation, through things like analytics or energy management applications. Basically, it works in parallel to the legacy Metasys system, and adds value day one very quickly.
So you say parallel. I definitely get that, but by the same token, let's say you have a school board or a campus, if you will, and you got several floors with the legacy, let's just say the N2 Johnson product, and you decide
Sure.
you want to add some of Ben Dorsey's VAV controllers, for example, from KMC, which speak BACnet or whatever. Are you then saying that what you could do is you could take the one floor through your system, put the KMC controllers on that, still have the Johnson, and go floor by floor until they're all replaced?
Kind of the inverse of that, I think.
Okay.
What you would do is you would put our BACnet N2 router into a legacy Johnson system, and then at the applications level, you would start adding value-added application. Maybe analytics is the first thing that you want to do to get a better handle on what's happening in the building. Okay, that opens the door for you to do a migration if you would like to, and that is, over time, these N2 devices, even though they were rock solid, I mean, Johnson was the premier organization as far as designing both hardware and software for many, many years. The life expectancy
those would argue they still are.
Yeah.
Especially Chris Lane and Chris Eichmann from Johnson.
Absolutely. But the life expectancy of these devices is just, they're going to live. I mean, you put them in adverse conditions like on a rooftop or something. Yes, they're electronics. It's going to take its toll. But in a normal conditioned building, they're going to run for a long time. So what our product does is it takes advantage of the fact that they're still rock solid. And so we integrate into them. We make the N2 devices look exactly like BACnet devices. And so from the standpoint of current generation applications, you're talking to a BACnet device when it's really that legacy N2 device out there. The reality is, to be successful in the long term, talking from the building owner or operator's standpoint, you need to have a plan in place. You need to admit to yourself that what we're doing is adding value in the short term, but it's also giving you the opportunity to do a very graceful migration away from that older technology that eventually is going to need to be replaced. So do it on your terms, not by accident when things fail. And that's kind of what we coach our partners through that process. One of the things that we do a lot of education and coaching along the way. Admit up front that what you're doing is integration. Integration is tough work. There are risks associated with it. There are unknowns. And in order to be successful, one of the things that you need to do is be honest with yourself, admit that there are going to be risks, and then take the appropriate steps to mitigate and minimize those risks. And if you do that, you can be very, very successful.
Switching gears, Steve, you guys seem to do a lot of really good stuff with the integration. Tell us about what else you do. I see you also do industrial automation.
Yeah, our development partner is actually Obermeyer Software in Germany. Their legacy is they've done a lot of work with the manufacturing community in Europe, a lot of work in the OPC world, and in fact, that's the way Klaus Obermeyer and I met each other. When I was with Johnson, I was one of those go-to people. If it doesn't fit in the box of building automation, throw it over the fence to Steve, and he'll probably figure out how to do it.
Nice.
Well, it turns out at the time that I was there, they still had the M3 and the M5 workstation as the core operator workstations. They were actually under the skins OPC based. We needed to add SNMP support for the data center marketplace and clean rooms and so on and so forth to Metasys. And so I found Klaus Obermeyer and Obermeyer Software in the process, and using his technology, we added SNMP support to Metasys. That relationship continued forward when it was time to make the decision to build products for S4. I interviewed a number of different potential partners, and Klaus and his team ended up getting the nod, and we've been working together ever since.
Super. Well, Eric, I was going to change gears again. I always love when we get some of these veterans that have such great experience and have been legacy players and partners in this industry. I was going to switch it to, what do you see coming next? What's the technology that's coming down, that's bearing down on us, and is going to change our building automation world significantly? What do you think, Steve? What can we expect in the next 1 year to 5 years?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things I've done recently is attending the Niagara Summit, and you're seeing what's going on with that technology. Obviously, they've been market leaders for many years. It was refreshing to see that the technology is being updated. The other thing that I was really excited about was the fact that the Niagara integration community is maturing very, very, very rapidly, very nicely. They're looking at things in a much different way than they originally did. If we go back 4 or 5 years ago, if I talked to a tritium dealer, a Niagara dealer, what have you, and we started talking about what we did, and they would ask, how does your driver install into the AX system? As soon as I told them it was a network appliance and not a driver, conversation was over. Why
is that, Steve? Why do you think that was the case?
Well, I think that was just part of the extremely good marketing that the tritium folks had. I mean, they trained the industry to think that if it doesn't fit inside of the box, it's not a valid integration. I think that reality has set in. Integrators have really gone out and done some investigation on their own, and even though the Niagara platform is huge, it's technically elegant and so on and so forth, there are things that it can't do. And so when you start looking at what we've done, things like the coexistence with the Metasys head end, you just simply cannot do as a driver in the Niagara platform. So there are value adds that we can do that just simply the combination of the Niagara platform for the automation engine, for the graphics and user interface and so forth, with our technology as the integration platform, you get the best of both worlds, and the integrators are seeing
Steve,
that value.
Is it fair to say that that you guys are more customizable? Maybe Niagara seems like it's very, very flexible. You can do a lot with it. But if I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like you guys are able to customize a bit more. Is that a fair statement?
Almost. And customize not necessarily from the integrator standpoint, but to add features without limit, if you will. So our system runs on a real-time operating system. Basically takes over a dedicated box, and we can do what we need to do to get the job done. So the other thing that we've done is we chose a hardware platform that had plenty of horsepower, plenty of memory. So we do things like make it very easy for the integrator to discover all the devices on the N2 bus, to automatically map the points to those devices and start the publishing process. So we looked at not only the technology, but we looked at the integration process. And any time at all that we could take one of those steps in the integration process, if you will, and have the computer do it instead of the human doing it, we had the flexibility to do that. And certainly that adds value very quickly from the standpoint of you get things done fast, and the computer makes less errors than people do.
Well, let's talk a bit about that. So, for example, Kenny and I have been, tracking. I don't know if you're familiar with Haystack Connect or not. A lot of the people in the industry are there, and obviously that tagging convention helps. Do you guys use Haystack, or when you say, again, it sounds like what you guys do, it streamlines the process, which would ultimately lead to less installation time, I'm guessing. But regarding, I mean, it was Haystack. Would that fit into your platform or be used?
Haystack fits
Or
into
necessary?
it fits into the directions very nicely. There is a enhancement on the books. We haven't started working on it yet, but because of the way that we profile the devices that we find on the N2 bus, we can add additional profile information for each device and each point into our configuration files that would include the Haystack tags. And so basically what we will do eventually is we'll be publishing those devices and endpoints not only as BACnet devices and points, but they will also incorporate the Haystack tagging.
Way cool, way cool. So HTML5 was obviously is sort of the big news, right? With you know, people like DG Logic have, you know, got their platform in HTML5. It's a big thing with Niagara 4. Does it have any effect on you guys at all, one way or another?
It absolutely does. The way our system is architected, I mentioned several times, it runs as a network appliance, no monitor, no keyboard, so on and so forth. Today there is a separate application that we deliver to our integrator partners based on the Microsoft Management Console technology. Looks very much like Windows Explorer. That has served us well, but it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, and it's not quite as active as we would like it to see. So our user interface is being re-architected in HTML5.
Very cool, very cool. Well, talk about, if you will, Steve, because I'm not, you know, from your perspective, how does why is HTML5 important or significant from your perspective, and how is it going to change things?
From our standpoint, it's going to make the user experience more interactive. It's going to make sure that things are up to date as far as the statuses of devices and points and so forth that we're displaying to the customer. So, you know, I think overall it will improve their experience. It will make them, let me say, more confident that what they're seeing is what's really happening out there on the N2 system and so on and so forth. So, big improvement.
Cool. Kenny, you had a question, yeah?
Well, you know, I had just your thoughts, Steve, because again, I just love bouncing these things off of people that have been in the industry for a long time and really know it well, really know the inside of the industry. We had a recent announcement that was at the Realcomm IBComm where you had some new players coming to the forefront and declaring themselves now members of the building management business. You had Intel, you had Google, you have Microsoft, you have Dell, and then Cisco's returning back into the building space. What do you think the impact, short and long-term impact, of these players coming in with their big pockets to our building management industry?
Well, I think it's a recognition of how quickly the industry is converging. You know, how much of a recognition there is that what we're doing is, you know, handling data out there, and data has value in it, especially when you start picking up all these little pieces of data and putting them together and analyzing what they mean. You know, the intelligence is moving out to the edge of the network, where devices can be more autonomous, make decisions on their own, and I think you know, the closer to the source that you can make decisions, the better those decisions are going to be. As far as the, let me say, the microcontrol, but the fact that you can then share that data, and of course this brings in the big data discussions. Share the data, roll it up into huge databases, and look for the overarching trends and find out what's the most important thing to work on.
Great answer. The last one I had, actually there was two of them, but there seems to be the opinion that we have a scarcity of up-and-coming systems integrators, and these new systems integrators are going to have to be, the terms are different, you know, but master systems integrator, where they're going to have to be really a jack of all trades and master of all trades. It used to be one, you know, you could be good at everything but not so good at one thing, or good at one thing and not so good at everything, but it seems like the pressure's on to develop it. And do you think we're actually, is our laissez-faire style of developing people, where they used to come out of branches, then went on their own, or go to tech school and then have an interest in IT. Everybody seems to have come into our industry at this level through some unique, passageway or journey. Do you think that there's I know you do training. Do you have maybe an internal program where you're trying to scout the next generation of systems integrators and make sure that they know a lot of what's going on, a lot about equipment, a lot about the new technologies, so they can go out there and do the integrations of the future?
I think that the communications world, the IT world, is part of our life today. It's not happening; it's here. And in order for, as we move forward, for people to be effective in this business, they are going to have to know computers. They're going to have to know networking. The day of someone picking up a computer and reinventing something because it's neat and cool and just because they can do it is past. Standards efforts have made life easier for everyone, and most especially the building owner. They can go out there and focus on finding a solution, not necessarily finding a technology, and those are very different things. So, and I've talked about computers and networking here, but I don't want to minimize the knowledge about mechanical systems, HVAC systems, and so on and so forth. Sure. In order to effectively measure things and control things and so on and so forth, you need to know how they work. You need to know the theory behind them and so on and so forth. So I think we have to be a little bit careful as we rush towards the Internet of Things, and I think there's a building Internet of Things out there now and so on and so forth. We have to be careful that we don't go there so fast that we forget about the stuff that we're trying to manage and monitor and improve.
Good answer.
Yeah, way cool, way cool. Well, Steve, the thing we're hearing a ton about in the building automation side of the business is over and over we're hearing about internet security and cyber hacking and things like that. Speak a bit, if you will, from your perspective. How big a problem do you think it is, and how does your gateway account for any additional security measures to keep you from hacking into a building automation system?
Well, this goes back to lessons learned many years ago. I was working as a government contractor at NASA headquarters, and happened to be running the communications group there. So part of my job was security officer. And of course, one of the things I learned almost day one was that your security is only as good as your physical security. So let the door open anywhere, and someone's going to walk through it. Well, and I think that extends very nicely to the IT world and building automation world and so on and so forth. We all just need to be cognizant that the bad guys are getting more sophisticated every day, and if we leave the door open anywhere, someone's going to walk through it. So certainly is important. We take care of security with our own products in making sure that the people accessing the system have to have credentials to do that. We use secure tunnels between our management console that runs on anyone's PC and the network appliance itself to make sure that the data can't accidentally be picked up and so on and so forth. So it's a critical skill that we all have to have.
Very, very cool, Steve. Well, so listen, I think we're kind of coming close to the close here, but I sort of want to summarize a little bit what I've heard. It sounds like your guys' sweet spot is really working with the Johnson into legacy stuff. Seems like you guys really have that. And then for our listeners that follow Control Trends, we were at ISA, I think it's StockCom Kenny in Louisville, Kentucky. They actually reconditioned those controllers. It seems like if you got Steve working with you on the front end and those guys working with you replacing the legacy controllers, it can get you through budget crunches and keep you going along until you upgrade. But that being said, Steve, so from your perspective, what do you hear? Give me 4 or 5 of the top reasons that people would want to deal with the S4 group.
Thank you. That's a neat entree here. Um, what we do is as I mentioned early on, is we make it possible to extend the life of what you have out there and enhance its capabilities. That's kind of in a nutshell. But if you get down to details, the fact that we can coexist with the legacy Metasys head end, that means you have very little, if any, disruption to the day-to-day operations of the building while the building is being updated. We started out with that capability as a transition strategy. Well, lo and behold, the cloud computing came along, and without changing the technology at all, our devices ended up becoming more of on-site agents for data access. So instead of a transition strategy, it's a long-term strategy for coexisting with the Metasys system. And that's probably the number one thing that differentiates us from anyone else out there doing integration products. If you look at the way we go about it, the more complex the integration, the more the technology shines, the more cost-effective it becomes, and so on and so forth. For instance, one of the current problems that we're working on solving, the Johnson legacy systems had a capability that they called pass-through mode, where the Metasys configuration commissioning utilities could be operated from the Metasys head end, or from your operator workstation. That's been lost in a lot of the products out there that do integrations. So one of the projects that we have in the test environment at Obermeyer Software right now, it's about to come into S4 for QA testing, is a replacement for that capability. The way that's going to work is on any PC that's running our management console, you'll be able to fire up the HVAC Pro or the GX9100 utility, reach out across the network, and commission an N2 device that needs recommissioning. So it's, we're as we started out earlier, we're listening, we're collaborating with customers. That's one of the most frequently asked for enhancements that I've heard forever.
Well,
So
Steve,
I
I got to ask the question. I know Johnson Controls, like everybody else, is in the business to sell their newer products. So you getting any hate mail from those guys, or do they collaborate with you? I know when we talk to the guys at ISA, sometimes the branches are their biggest customers when they can't get their customers can't get the budget. How is that working for you?
We've been around for 12 years now. And I guess you almost have to look at it as if we had a honeymoon with Johnson. When we first started out, we signed up for the Metasys compatibility program. I think we surprised a lot of people as to what we were going to do with that. Rather than the traditional do a third-party device that talks to the N2 protocol, we made it possible for the N2 protocol to become an open interface, and published OPC, published to BACnet, and so forth. So, yeah, depending what your role is within Johnson Controls, they were not happy with us at times. But if you look at the customer-facing people in the field, people who felt the pain of the customer and needed to find solutions to real day-to-day problems, we have a lot of fans out there. So sure. It's an interesting relationship.
Very cool. Well, Steve, I tell you what, walk us through the process. So I'm a building owner, or maybe a systems integrator that's listening, or a contractor, and walk me through the process. I mean, how do they get your product?
Okay. Let's take the simple case. They just simply contact us. We review their requirements. We look at the problems that they're trying to solve, and confirm that in fact our technology is right for them. And in most cases the answer is yes. In a few cases, because of the fact that we're working at the N2 field bus level, if they want to get exclusively to data that is in the Metasys head-end system, we can't help them with that. But there are a lot of advantages to working at the level that we're working at. If you look at the integration process, they would unplug the N2 bus from the supervisory controller, plug it into our downstream interface on the BACnet N2 router. We provide another cable that they connect to another port on the N2 router. That plugs it back into the Phoenix Contact type jack in the supervisory controller. So we've inserted our network appliance in between the supervisory level and the field level of the Johnson system. The devices in the head end are going to go offline for about an hour while you run our configure wizard. One of the things that configure wizard does is it sets up all the routing tables and so forth in our product. Its name implies what it does. It acts very similar to a IP router, only it's doing it with the N2 protocol. So as soon as this configure wizard completes running, everything automatically comes back online on the Metasys head end. We're publishing to BACnet or to OPC at that point, and you start bringing in your value-added applications to add value to the system. So it's a pretty straightforward process. One of the things that I always caution our partners on is you really need to invest in learning those Metasys field devices. Garbage in, garbage out. If things aren't working out there the day you start the integration is not going to magically make them work. The other part of it is you really need to understand what those devices do, how they work, which points you have to work with to change schedules, change set points, tune parameters, so on and so forth. If you are a BAS dealer from anyone other than Johnson, putting your head in on this system, you have to know those N2 devices just as well as you would know your own product in order to be really successful with this.
And you'd also have to have for the individual controllers, you're still going to have a programming tool, right? Access to a programming tool for the individual controllers, or no?
Oh, absolutely. I mentioned HVAC Pro and GX9100 earlier. Those are the tools that you use in the Johnson world. We stopped short of trying to reproduce the function of those. Johnson did a fantastic job on those. They're obviously getting long in the tooth at this point, but they were state of the art at the time that they were developed. They do the job. They're not something that you use every day, so we didn't see the value in fixing something that wasn't broken. So we make the provisions for the integrator to use the existing tools, and everybody wins.
Well, I tell you something, Steve, we were really impressed with 2 years ago at the first Control Trends Awards. The Johnson Controls Panoptics actually won the Building Graphical Tool Interface of the Year, and Kenny and I don't handle it; it doesn't come through distribution, so I think it speaks really, really highly of just how well thought of that product is. And I'm assuming your system would seamlessly integrate right into a Panoptics type setup.
We publish everything to BACnet IP, so if Panoptics can BACnet data, it absolutely would.
Cool. Kenny, what do you got?
No, Steve, you answered the question I was going to ask, and I was just going to say some of the partners. Like I say, I shopped through your website looking for things to talk about, and I see you have. Who are some of your allies in the industry? B&B Electronics, and who else? Who else do you work closely with?
Sure, B&B Electronics. We've worked with them since day one. They supply a lot of the off-the-shelf hardware that we use. One of the interesting stories there is they have a device that they designed and developed for Johnson Controls called the Combus Quick Tester.
That's
and one of the first steps that we tell our integration partners is go out and validate that N2 bus. Make sure that everything is in spec before you start the integration. And one of the reasons for that is, we know that you're going to be driving that N2 bus harder than it's ever been driven before, because in the coexistence scenario, You have all the load that was originally coming from the Metasys head-end system, and now you have a Ethernet speed data stream coming at you through BACnet IP. That's going to put a lot more load ultimately on the N2 bus. So getting that bus as clean as you possibly can day one is critical to success. So B&B is certainly a very important partner to us. We have strategic supplier relationships with Honeywell, with Schneider Electric. So those are important relationships. We have just
Steve, real quick, speak about that. What does it mean, strategic relationships? Are you writing software for them? It's like a software level, or
it's
the branches, or?
Yeah, it's a strategic supplier relationship, and in both cases it takes on a little bit different direction as far as the contract vehicles and so on and so forth. But what it means to their dealers and their branches is that it's a relationship whereby you can buy the S4 products through their online ordering system at the same time that you're buying their own native products.
I got you. Cool. Sure. Very, very cool. All right. Kenny, anything else?
No, that was it. I'll tell you, for our first go-round, Steve, you did marvelous, and I'll tell you what, I'm enlightened. I think anybody that watches the show here is going to take another look at S4 when they have any integration issues and questions. Now, one more time, you do support people remotely, and you do web-based training. So why don't we just cover that real quick, some of the services you provide and how people would get in touch with you to get those services.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly we'll pick up the phone any time that we get a phone call, obviously. The number here is 801-621-1970. You guys went to my website and found us, www.thes4group.com. Contact information is out there on the website. And again, send us an email, explain the problem that you're trying to solve, and we'll work with you to make sure that you get the right solution put together. And it ends up the way we're successful is we become part of the team with our integration partners, and make sure we're not successful until they're successful.
Sure.
So we absolutely have to work together to make these things really work 100%.
Wow. Super. Well, there you have it. That's Steve Jones from the S4group.com. Check those guys out. Steve, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. It's really great to hear about what you guys are doing. Kenny, fantastic stuff there. Steve's not lying about picking the phone up. I've called out there a couple of times. He picks his own phone up, which is pretty darn impressive. So that's Eric Stromquist, Ken Smyers, the man, the myth, the legend, and we're going to bid you adieu. Steve Jones from the S4 Group. Thanks again, buddy.
Super. Take care, guys.